Now we will hear from economic development. In prior years, you would receive a different question, but considering the budgetary constraints, with the understanding of a status quo recommended budget, what does that entail for the operations of your department? And just for the viewing audience, if you can provide a brief synopsis of the services that you provide for the city, and the floor is yours, Mr. Wiltshire.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. And we have a so to answer your question, we're a little bit different from some of the other departments, I guess, that have spoken to you previously, in that we are a subset, really, of the mayor's office. So I think Ms. Mason has covered those specific aspects, although there are some line items that we highlight in this presentation that do relate to direct funding requests. And so we believe that the budget that the mayor has presented is adequate to fund the initiatives that this office is undertaking.
Thank you so much.
And to answer your second question, I'll refer to page 2, which is our mission statement. And that is to really 3 things that our office does. That is to attract and retain jobs for the city of Nashville, for Nashvillians, to work to improve the economic environment in Nashville, and to ensure that every Nashvillian has the opportunity to participate in the success of the city. As those of you long-serving members of the council will know, I started in this position about 7 years ago. At that time, the unemployment rate was over 8%, and so there were very different macroeconomic conditions in the city. And at that time, I would say that the first point really was much more of the emphasis that we focused on at that time. When unemployment is high, that's what you do. But as the macroeconomic conditions have changed, we've shifted the emphasis more towards the second and third categories. The we here is Audra Ladd, myself, and Justine Avila, who's the executive director of the Music City Music Council. Ashford Hughes was in our office for a very short period of time, but with his new promotion and the 75 different responsibilities that Ashford fulfills between labor, workforce, diversity, inclusion, veterans affairs, Ashford, I think there's several others. He's technically outside of the office, but as we'll refer to later on, really the entire mayor's office works in a very coordinated manner. Adrian Harris is the mayor's advisor on housing, yet we've been very involved in workforce and affordable housing because that's critical to economic and community development. Similarly, Councilwoman, my council person, Berkeley Allen, has asked lots about transit questions and has asked about those specifically related to economic development deals. Aaron Hofkenscheel and Mary Beth Eichert are the transportation advisors, but we get involved in those issues because, again, transportation is critical to economic development. So we thought we'd start with a quick overview of sort of where we are in macroeconomic conditions. And if you all please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions if you have stuff along the way, or we can ask questions at the end. But the upper left-hand corner unemployment rate has steadily declined and is now at 2.6%. Nashville actually has the lowest unemployment rate of any major market in the entire United States. The lowest of any market in the United States. The jobs created in the upper right-hand corner have been anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 jobs in terms of job announcements. The actual jobs created have actually been much more significant because this wouldn't pick up so your local baker adding 2 or 3 people. These are significant job announcements. And I should note that 3,235 for fiscal year 18 is not yet complete. We hope to add to that, but that's where we are thus far this year. But the point is not everyone has participated in the success of the city, and that evidence of that is indicated by the graph in the lower left-hand corner, which says that the poverty rate in Davidson County is 14.8%, which is inexcusably high. Now, that has declined over the last 2 years, and this is for 2016. We don't yet have the 2017 data, but it remains higher than it should be for a city that's experiencing our growth, and so that's one of the core focuses of our office. That being said, incomes have risen rapidly, and you see in the bottom right-hand corner, the personal incomes have accelerated since we sort of came out of the Great Recession, and our per capita personal income was $58,283 in 2016. So We've had a mission statement. That's where things stand. What does our office do? Those initiatives, some of those initiatives are listed on page 4. We work on recruiting employers to Nashville. Alliance Bernstein being a recent significant example, but it's everything from large businesses like that to smaller businesses like Jump Crew that we'll talk about a little bit later. We convene and advise small business service providers. This is really Audra's area of expertise, but would include anything from the Entrepreneur Center to the Nashville Business Incubation Center to SCORE and other resources, Small Business Administration, et cetera. We work, and this is really Ashford's area, on making sure that we have an alignment of the workforce pipeline and obviously need to have the talent to fulfill the jobs that we're seeking to recruit. We've had the opportunity over the last year, 18 months, to tour around various council districts with many of you and take a tour of your districts to learn more in depth about what you are looking for in your districts for economic growth or economic and community development. We've done that in conjunction with the Nashville Downtown Partnership, the Chamber of Commerce, the Civic Design Center, the Planning Department, Public Works Department, really in an effort to understand specifically what is happening in each of your districts. The fifth bullet here is a little bit oblique, but we are working, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, to make sure that we have an efficient delivery of upward mobility services, which is sort of a catchphrase for everything from job training to an ability to have a new career opportunity to some of the more important issues that people might need to have as barriers to being able to move up. Like if you have a felony, you can't get a driver's license, so working on felony expungement. And those services exist in this city, but in many cases are disparately located and difficult to navigate. And so we're working to help streamline that, both in order to improve the ability of folks to be able to take advantage of that and to help people understand that there really are opportunities for them to be able to improve their lives and to make it easier for that to happen. I sort of referenced the 6th bullet point here already. We work with transit, resilience, housing incentive pilot program. We also work with a number of other partner agencies. So I sit on the board of the Nashville Downtown Partnership, the Airport Authority. We staff the Industrial Development Board, and we sit on the board of the Entrepreneur Center and various other organizations that help perform this work. And then the penultimate point is really Justine's focus area, which is to sustain Nashville's role as the worldwide leader for music. And then we also administer a foreign trade zone. So I mentioned we don't have a specific sort of staff funding line, but page 5 lists some of the specific funding requests. I'll call them out in order. As a new initiative in this year's budget, there's $100,000 to be delivered by 4 of the chambers, and I believe a couple of those representatives from the LGBTQ chamber, from the Hispanic chamber, are here in the audience, and several of the other chambers are going to come together, really primarily focused on being able to scale up minority-owned businesses and other businesses that have historically been disadvantaged, the Black Chamber as well, to provide ability for those businesses to scale up. You just heard from the chamber. That is the 2nd bullet point here. We have support for small business incentives that Audra will talk about in a moment. That's actually a decrease of $50,000 for the amount that was allocated to that last year. And the Entrepreneur Center, $125,000. That was actually cut in half last year, but this is flat with what was ultimately approved in the budget last year. And then the final point in terms of a specific line item on this sheet, and there are numbers of others in the budget, but the incentive payments, these are the per job cash grant incentive payments as opposed to abatements. With that, I'll turn to the next page listed here, and you should have also received a spreadsheet detailing more about these pilots. But here are the pilots on one page that have been approved that are either in effect. The ones that are in effect are in green. Those that have already run their course and expired are in black, and those that have not yet begun are in blue. Similarly, for the cash grants, you saw the dollar amounts for the 4 that are in effect. There's actually 5 that are in green because the HCA Dell/AIG sites is aggregated with the Parallon Sarah Cannon. That's actually really in one payment, but these are those agreements. All of this information, I should note, is available to you and available to the entire public on the incentive database that we had distributed to you previously. And we've got one example. This is what the database looks like as the map. And then there are this call-out box just for the Bridgestone job grant is one example of that. But there are links through to the legislation that approved it. And we've just this week completed expected versus actuals. So in a number of cases, when you all approve these, your sort of projection, what will it cost us in terms of foregone revenues? But the building hasn't been built yet. We don't know what the tax rate is. There are a variety of other things. And so we now have, I think, after a lot of work, got our hands on sort of actuals versus projected. And interestingly, I had thought all the actuals would come in much lower. In a number of cases, Carlex being one example, because the business grew so rapidly and they had so much more personal property, the value of the abatement actually slightly exceeded what we had expected that it would. But of course, that also means the tax dollars that we didn't abate, the 50% we didn't abate, that we took in, were also significantly larger than we had anticipated. So, but that detail will be added to this database. Audra, I'll turn it over to you to talk about the Small Business Incentive Program on page 9.
It's on. Go ahead, Ms. Ladd.
Hi, thank you. Small Business Incentive Program, there's a summary of the 2 small business incentives that we offer. One's a property improvement incentive and one is a fast-growing company incentive. You can see the companies that have received the incentive, the district, your districts are listed by there, and the amounts. So I just wanted to flag that on the property improvements, since the inception of the project, $621,762 have been delivered to those small businesses. Those have been matched with $3 million of primary dollars on the exterior, and if you include the interior work, it's over $8 million. And the $124,250 for the job grant has supported the creation of 249 jobs.
And actually, you have the first point on the next page, so we can launch into that as well.
Oh, great. The next page, page 10, projects planned for this year. There is a lot of exciting things happening. Really thankful for the opportunity to give you a preview and happy to talk in detail about these. One is the launch of an online business portal. This is a website. There's a number of cities that have these business portals, basically to help businesses streamline. How do they start? How do they grow? How does permitting work? Right now, you have to go to about 12 different places to find what you need to start and launch a business. And so this will streamline that and provide all the resources in one website.
We're also, I sort of referenced this a little bit with the actual versus projected, but the mayor has asked us specifically to try and do a more detailed review of the revenues generated and expenses incurred by past economic development deals. I've spoken with a number of you about this. It's somewhat difficult to do that, right? I don't necessarily know if UBS has 962 employees, what percentage of those, how much is each person spending on taxable goods in Davidson County. I can't audit their personal spending, but we are going to try and, in a vacuum of not having the detail, that level of detail, at least get a little bit more specificity by trying to get some additional information from employers about sort of wages and percent who live in the county and some other things to get a little bit finer point on that return. We have models that we've created and we're trying to test those out. And then in terms of property taxes, looking at adjacent properties and how property values might have changed for projects that have happened. So that's one of the things that the mayor's asked us to come back to him with.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wilshire. Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Wilshire, as I know you know, I've supported most of these events over the years, simply because, as an example with Bridgestone, I felt like it was good for the economy. It kept the number of jobs here. It added an additional 600 or 700, whatever it was. Where we are today, though, with us not accommodating the COLA and some of the other, I can tell you, I don't know about the rest of us in here, but we're catching grief over this. What's the answer? What do we say? And Chair, forgive me for going outside of the purview of the, but I do believe this is a budget question.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, I think it's a really important question. Well, I don't need to tell you it's an important question. You know it's an important question because you're hearing about it from a lot of your constituents. I mean, there's a very long answer, and I don't want to take up the time of this council to give the long-winded answer. I think the short version of that answer is it's very difficult to turn the spigot on and off. You can't just say, we're closed for business, we don't want any more jobs. It's a very competitive environment out there, and I think it's important for the city to continue to try and pursue economic development and growth, because though this year had many issues in terms of the budget, I would point out that if you adjusted the revenues from last year down for the reset on property taxes, the year-over-year growth in property taxes was actually $41 million, right? There's a $15 million increase, but the baseline was reset down by $26 million. Similarly, sales taxes are up $25 million this year. So the revenue growth is from the two main sources that come from business activity has actually been significant. And that doesn't mean that you could just sort of run around and do whatever. As I said earlier, I think that the pursuit should match the macroeconomic conditions. And when unemployment's at 8%, above 8%, you take one course of action. When it's at 2.6%, you take another course of action. But I hear your point, and I certainly understand the concern that many citizens are feeling about sort of the tail effect of some of the efforts that we've taken. I would try and will try and do a better job of articulating the tremendous benefits that the city has received from all the business activity that we've generated, that this body has supported.
Right. Well, I would be remorse if I didn't say last year I warned us on spending $74 million out of reserve funds, which you were one of the ones who told me, oh, we're not actually going to do it. Well, we've done it. And so I'm going to reiterate that I just hope that as we go through this, when we see the jobs coming in, when we understand there's additional revenues, when we know that we're anticipating additional revenues, I just hope that we will understand the priorities and we will keep our priorities where they should be. And so if we're going to keep doing these deals, and I'm not saying we shouldn't, but if we're going to keep doing these deals, then I think it's going to be imperative that the administration brings us budgets that reflect the priorities that we say publicly are important to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Matt and Audra, for such professional presentation. Just kind of a technical question here, if you didn't mind in reading this. On the grants, total, year 1, year 2, year 3 for Ryman Hospitality, $8.154 million. Is that that's a present value?
No, that's a projection based upon the expected value at the time.
You're summing the total in the out years.
Correct. There isn't a discount. There is no discount rate applied to it. So that's just actual dollars.
Okay. Thanks. But then on the Omni total of $103 million, that is a present value over the 20 years of the payment.
I'd have to go back and check. I don't believe so. There were a variety of different components to that. There was a cash payment. There was a pilot and tip. Sorry, go ahead.
No, well, because the convention center was just here, and I think we're now at the annual payment of $14 to $15 million a year for over the life of that, which would add up to several $100 million, and not the $103 million here.
I'll go take a look at that.
Okay, but that's why I was confused as to one is not a present value and the other appears to be a present value. Well, if you didn't mind redoing this, if that's not a present value, in order to keep the columns consistent on that.
Sure.
And then I noticed on the cumulative total for that, it's not applicable, but that would, even with $103 million, that would give you a total of sort of double of the $122 million that is in there. And I do want to note for the public or anybody watching, so much of this comes from a couple of these. The Omni and Dell are really the lion's share of the money here. But if we're going to report the Omni, I guess we should do it consistently and not have the present value as you showed in the Ryman Hospitality one.
Absolutely, and I apologize. I mean,
No. You have a lot of information here, and it's all
check that.
It's all different. But you see my basic
Absolutely.
point about just keeping the columns consistent.
100%.
Super. Very grateful. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Councilman Cooper. Vice Chair Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess one question. This is on page 7 that deals with cash grants. So it looks like we've got a couple listed. The blue indicates cash grants that have been approved, but the grant period has not yet started yet.
Yes, sir.
And what I was looking for was when do they start? On the blues, when do they start? And what's the amount? And you may need to just send them to us, but if you have them in front of us, I'd be interested to know what they are.
Sure, and this board this council will recall, the way these deals work is they're approved for a specific number of years, but it is at the company's option as to when they start that. As an example, Warner Music chose to start this year despite the fact that they would only officially have 28 employees. They could have waited another year. They have, as of the end of last month, 155 employees. So really it just becomes a time value of money question for them because you're burning off you're getting the money sooner, but you're burning off one of your years. So that's a long way of saying that Phillips, as an example, could choose to start. They're expecting to have 815 employees. I believe they're around 160 today. I don't know if they will choose to start this December. If they do choose to start this December, it would be a fiscal year 2020 budget impact because they have to notify us by December 15th that they're going to start the grant period. Then they have to report the numbers to us by February 28th. And then the mayor, the finance director, and the mayor include that in their budget. And then the council either does or doesn't approve the budget. And then the amounts are expended in the July of the following fiscal year. So it's a long way of saying, I don't know exactly when they might start, but it would be reasonable, I think, to expect that Bridgestone will start for fiscal year 2020. Phillips is maybe more of a question mark.
Okay, and
Bridgestone would be most likely $500,000. They're net up about 1,000 employees.
Okay.
They filled up their downtown headquarters and then opened up the operation in Antioch, where they've got another 400 employees.
so when this happens, when they trigger that element where they're going to start, I guess I'm trying to figure, do you all notify the council when that thing is triggered so we know in advance, because let's say Bridgestone triggers it this year, which will affect next year's budget, then at least we know going into next year that we're going to have another cash grant that's going out there that we have to be cognizant of.
Yeah, so the specific mechanism is that they notify the industrial development. They write a letter to the industrial development board, but I have not historically provided that to council, but I absolutely can and will. We'll send that on to you as well when I receive it.
But Madam Chair, I think obviously it's not impacting this budget on these new ones, but it will impact further budgets, and I think we probably ought to start getting that so we know. All right, thank you.
I noted that as well, Vice Chair. Council Lady Dow.
Thanks. I just had one quick question to ask on this about the clawbacks that we have. Do we get any information about, like, for example, I know Dell had lost some employees, and I was thinking that they were responsible for refunding us something. How is that captured, and do you have any numbers on that?
Yeah, so each agreement is written differently. There are not in place any clawbacks. And let me just take a moment just to say, so a clawback, at least the way I use it, is where you reach back to a benefit received in a prior year because of a failure to meet something the following year, and you say, give me that money back now. We have not written that into any agreements. What we do have in agreements are accountability provisions, which say at the time, if you don't meet a threshold, then you just don't get the money up front. So the per job cash grant is fairly straightforward, right? You pay for the employees you get. There's no clawback. It's just if you have 1,000 employees, you get paid for 1,000. If you have 250, you get paid for 250. The pilot agreements, however, are written in, and this is really the standard, and it has been. It was not in actually some of the first deals that I'll do, I'll confess, but it has been in subsequent deals where if a company says that they're going to provide, like LKQ, that they're going to add, or CHS maybe is an easier example. CHS says they're going to add 2,000 employees if they have certain thresholds that they have to hit, and if they miss that number, instead of receiving a 50% abatement in that year, they only get a 40% abatement in that year. And so each one of them has those mechanisms. So we never lose the money and have to go back and get it.
So on the Dell agreement, did we have any kind of abatement or what have you? I don't know, whatever you want to call it, because I wasn't here when we made that deal, but I do know that they've not lived up to the to what we expected as far as like staffing and keeping it open and everything at that Donaldson campus. And also know that our airport, or whatever they call that campus, I know HCA has taken over some of that space there. And I'm wanting to understand, like, what type of tax incentives are they receiving, our abatement, discounts, or whatever, and are we still honoring that? And is that captured in here? Because I was remembering from last time that I thought that since they were not meeting the amount that we had given them, that it was a lot less than what was kind of publicized.
Yes, you remember correctly, and I've got the spreadsheet here on that. So the short answer to your question is that if they have fewer than 1,500 employees, they lose. So let's take a step back. The Dell deal was done in 1999. It was for 40 years. It was $500 per job each year for 40 years, and a 100% property tax abatement for 40 years. It was a big deal. Dell did, though, if they had fewer than 1,500 employees, they would give up, would not receive that abatement. And I believe that it was 2% for every 1% that they missed by. So essentially for every 15 employees that they missed the 1,500, they lose 2% of the abatement. Now, as a side note, I should also say when HCA took over that part, half of the building, that doesn't receive the property tax abatement.
Okay.
So that goes on the property tax rolls because HCA is in there instead of Dell.
Okay.
Similarly, Seva Logistics took over the manufacturing and distribution arm of that campus when Dell no longer owned it, even though it was still producing Dell stuff, and the employees were still working for Dell. They were technically badged employees of Seva, so we didn't pay the $500 per job for each of those employees, and we got 100% of the property taxes on that manufacturing facility.
Okay.
So those have come on the property tax rolls. The piece that's remaining, they're at about 1,000 employees, and so they've missed the 1,500. So even that bit that still receives the abatement is not going to receive a 100% abatement. We will be getting property tax dollars on that as well.
Okay, that's good to know. That was the one, because I knew that was the largest one that we had. And I just have one more question about the Asurion on the Antioch campus. I know that recently I read that they're looking to construct a building downtown, or potentially have a larger space downtown. Is that correct? You know, about Asurion consolidating, putting all the employees on one campus?
Yes.
I want to know, will we receive any refund money on, because if they move them to one campus, hypothetically, they may not use, or probably will not be in that building that's out in Antioch right now.
So the Antioch building is not affected by that. Those 905 employees, or whatever the current number is, those employees are staying there.
Okay.
That's an operations center.
Okay.
The headquarters employees are at their Grassmere campus,
Right.
the KVB and Second campus, and they have an office out by the airport. It's those three locations that are consolidating right across 11th from the Tennessean site. The Antioch employees will stay in place.
Okay, so that's going to stay. And then, let me see, I thought I had one more thing. I have to ask you that later. I would just go on record and say that, these incentives do get a lot of, I think, a lot of interest, the way that people look at them. But I feel like we've made some really good investments in the city, especially in areas a lot, and I explain this to my neighbors. In certain areas, people are not looking to invest. Sometimes incentive is the key to getting them to invest because it gives them I guess, as one of my neighbors said, it gives them some incentive to come there. And a lot of times, as I've mentioned before, because most of these on this list, quite a few of them are in my district, like LKQ and Bridgestone and HCA, Assurion.
CHS?
Well, let's not go on, but
I'm just saying.
yeah, well, a lot of them are out of
done well,
Southeast Nashville, but what I will say is that, you always say but I do believe that this investment has led to other investments in the community. And I do not believe, and I stayed on record before, that had we not considered some type of incentive, that area would not be turning around right now because people were not interested in investing in that area. The incentive have drawn people to the community. But I go back to what I said before about like different areas that once we get an area and we see investment is going, I think where people get a little disenchanted with these incentives is that why do we keep on incentivizing people to come to an area that's already hot? And I think as we look to the future, that, we have an economic center downtown, and we have an opportunity to create that second economic center out in Southeast Nashville. And it just makes sense because that is where the second highest population of the city is, and that's where it has regional attraction and so forth. So it just makes sense. But I do think that, as we go forward, downtown is already hot. I think people want to come. We shouldn't have to pay them to come anymore. And so I do hope, I don't want to lose any business again, but I do hope we encourage some of these companies to spread out throughout the county. But thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Council Lady Dow. Council Lady Hurt, I'm going to move us along. Council Lady Hurt.
Thank you very much. Well, I've got quite a few questions and comments, and I'm going to start at the back. Well, no, let me start first and say that I appreciate the #1 economic center downtown and #2 in Southeast, but as a council at large, I want to see Nashville hot all over Nashville and not just in #1 and #2. I'm going to start at the back where you have the projects planned for FY19. It says that the pilot Kiva funded by a $55,000 grant. Is that for all of the businesses, the small businesses, or is that $55,000 grant per business?
The grant, $55,000 is the total we will be receiving from the state.
$55,000.
That's it. Just to pilot the program. So that's not per business. That's to start up the program, and the majority of the $55,000 will be used as matching funds for businesses in the Promise Zone that are run by women or minorities, people of color.
Right, so that means that if you got 50 businesses, or say 100 businesses, then that means that all of them are going to get $550 for a capital?
Well, this program with Kiva it's basically a crowdfunding loan program, so they raise money from the community that's then matched with this fund. Again, this is just a pilot fund. I did as well as I could with writing the grant to the state. This was a failed PIP that the state funded. So I'm also looking for private partners to help put money in that fund as well.
But the actual capital available to the businesses could be, theoretically, it could be $1 million, right? It's where you as an individual go onto Kiva and say, yeah, I'm willing to lend my money to this small business, and it's a program to crowdsource funding of small business loans in the Promise Zone.
Okay, well, let me just say this too. I don't need for it to be dressed up. Let's call a spade, because this right here says a $55,000 grant, and as she said, it's only one grant that several businesses will be able to apply for. And $55,000 is not much money for a business. And also I would like to say, with me, I'm not good at putting all of the pieces of the puzzles together. If I ask a question, I just like an answer so I can understand it. You got to tell it to me like I'm 3 years old. Okay, so the Small and Business Incentive Program. On the property improvement incentive, I think there are 12 businesses, and I only see one that's in North Nashville. Is that correct?
No. For the property improvement incentive, 1821 Jefferson Street, BHC Real Estate, Personal Touch Studios, and the Bonadies Urban Development. So 4 projects of the 12 are in North Nashville.
Okay, so But I know 1821 has a partner.
And BSM Ventures. Sorry.
And BSM Ventures.
Yeah, but I know the 1821 has a partner who's a very wealthy person. And I also know that Bonady's Urban Development also has several partners. So is there any way that you identify specifically if these are true minority or women-owned businesses and not just the face of individuals that
The small business incentive programs does not prioritize by race or gender. So it is for specific census tracts. And
so
it's
it is not minority?
No.
Okay.
No, in the legislation, it doesn't have that.
So what qualifies for small business?
So that particular program, it's by the census tract, by the area that it's in, it qualifies. And then if the property itself is less than $1 million. So it's in lower income census tracts, and then the property is less than $1 million.
Oh, so that means that a multimillionaire, as long as they buy property in a poverty or a low income district, and they want to develop, then they can, and they can also receive support and funding and assistance.
That is not the intention of the grant.
But you're saying that it happens.
That is not, we do not do a credit check or an income check on the applicant. So I think you can, and that's the way the legislation is written. There's no legislation in the legislation, it doesn't say that the applicant has to be of a certain race or gender.
No, I'm not necessarily asking about a race or gender. I'm saying small business incentives. So I'm just saying that I know that there happens to be, but I do know that Bonady's is a woman, so that's the reason why I mentioned a woman-owned business. So I'm just asking, so since you say it's based on the property, so that means that anyone who comes into that community and they want to develop in the community and the property is in the census tract, they can and they can receive assistance.
Yeah, it's first come, first served based on those criteria.
Very interesting. Okay, the cash grants. I served on the IDB, and
Yes, ma'am.
most of the time my concerns were about the demographics. So I want to know the accountability. I know that Council Lady Dow touched on that, but I too am interested in the accountability of the jobs. I know that you went through this whole thing about whether Dale did this and how many was here and there and everything. So I'm interested in knowing the accountability if they did what they said they were going to do. And I know that they use the minority and they also use minority if they are people of color, and they also use gender, and they call them twofers, where you get 2 for 1. And I'm just interested in know. So is it any way you all can provide us with that follow-up information?
So I say previously, in the first few deals, there was no reporting requirement attached to the deal. They didn't have.
Well, actually, I do recall asking Bridgestone for that information when I was on the IDB.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was prior to us voting for it.
Right. So I'm just saying, in the first few deals, Dell and Pearlon, Sarah Cannon, that was not a requirement. We have subsequently made that a requirement. And so we asked UBS for that information about the gender, county of residence, and the race of their employees on the cash grant, and they declined to provide that information. So I can't promise you that I can provide it. There isn't a requirement. We have now written in that it's a requirement that they provide that.
They declined.
They did. They actually said that they don't keep the race of their employees.
So can you decline it to give them the cash?
You absolutely can. It is absolutely this council's right to just not honor the commitment that the city has made. You have that absolute right.
Sounds like a breach of contract to me.
It is not a breach of contract because, again, it was not a requirement of the contract as it was written. They were not required to provide it.
What if they said they were going to agree to do
They
it?
never said that they were going to agree to do it, in UBS's case.
Oh, okay, maybe in UBS's case.
Correct.
Okay, let me go to,
One more question, Council Lady Hurt.
oh, we have a time limit?
We have 4 other departments. In consideration of time, the department heads that's been sitting here, we're running extremely behind schedule.
And I'm
Yeah.
more than happy to answer any
Yeah.
questions
What you can,
afterwards.
what
that
you
would
can
like.
do, Council Lady Hurd, is
No, well, let me just ask this one question, because I think there's a disconnect. On one hand, we have the unemployment rate here, and then down below it, we have the poverty rate. And I'm wondering if there is any kind of connection between those, where we don't have where there's very little unemployment, and if there's any connection to make sure that these people in this poverty rate, because I know in North Nashville, the unemployment rate is up with 25-30%. So I'd like to see these people work together to try to help those who have high unemployment. And I also like to, you talked about the jobs created here of 3235. I want to know if they were filled, and if they were, what the demographics were on those. And also, you named some partnerships that you all had going on, and I know there were some metro departments and some other people, but I didn't hear any of the department, relationships with people who were in those pockets of poverty. And I'd like to do that, because I think if you had those relationships, you might be able to connect those individuals who need jobs and with those who have jobs. And then there's one thing you mentioned too, that there, for unemployment and employment, that there are driver's license assistants and all of that, and I'd like to know who they are that's providing that.
Sure. We agree with you, Councilwoman.
Matt, I'm going to ask that you compile those questions, again, in consideration of time of council members and department heads. Compile those questions, send those to Danielle, myself, and Mr. Jameson, so we can get them on the SharePoint, and Council Lady Hurt will get those answers to you.
I think
Councilman Cooper.
Just super quickly, 3 sentences, Matt, if you would, because I know we're going to be dealing with this in a few weeks. The movie subsidy, the $1 million, the state of play on that is obligated or not obligated? Is that discretionary to the council to eliminate that $1 million or not?
I'm sorry, the movie subsidy.
Yeah. On page 14, economic development, contribute music and entertainment, economic development, and film initiatives, the $1 million.
Oh, the budget line item.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that is the council's, that is a budget line item for the council.
For the council, so it is amendable, so to speak.
As is everything. I mean,
As is everything, but I
you could
just,
choose not to pay UBS. You could, yes, but there's no
legal,
I am not aware of any
until
legal
this vote takes place.
or
Okay.
even moral obligation or commitment made. I am not aware of that.
Super. Appreciate it, because I know that'll come up in the subsequent weeks, and appreciate your view. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Councilman. Council Lady Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Vercher. Matt, thank you all for all of the incredible work you do, first and foremost. My question is, again, I know we have gone back and forth in regards to the property on Murfreesboro Road, which you just mentioned. That is a redevelopment district that was created, and it's not expired, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay, so we have approximately how many years remaining on that?
I don't know. I'm not prepared.
Can you get that for me?
I certainly can.
I also want to know if it did expire, has it been extended, or if there are plans to extend it? What is the long-term plan for the success of the vibrancy of that area, given that that was a redevelopment district that was formed? Are there plans for mixed market rate housing and affordable housing for that area? And the reason why I ask that is because the projects that you have listed planned for fiscal year 19, you indicate here that you're pursuing opportunity zone development funding. And I just want to make sure that I understand where the targets are for those areas. I want to know if there is going to be a projected map targeting the areas for that, and what areas would qualify. So those are those questions that I would like to have answered, and it's mostly pertaining to that property on Murfreesboro Road.
So I'll refer your questions on the redevelopment district to MDHA, which I believe has a council presentation Monday at 4 o'clock, so they can answer that the best. On opportunity zones, we've submitted 20 census tracts to the state. We understand that they have submitted those to the federal government as part of the Tax Cut Act, but we have not received notification yet from the state or the federal government as to which, if any, of those 20 census tracts have been designated. Once that designation occurs, we will seek to attract opportunity zone investment dollars to those census tracts. We just don't know where they are yet.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And again, Council Lady Johnson, you can submit those questions in advance so that we can get those answers to the department head and so that they can be shared on the SharePoint so that all colleagues can benefit from the questions and answers as it relates to the respective department. Matt, thank you so much for your economic development team. I apologize in advance. We are running a little behind. If the beer board can go ahead and make your way down as the economic development team are stepping down. Thank you so much.